Morning, Mark Scheipmeyer, the city hearing examiner. I've been asked to convene a public hearing to consider to receive testimony regarding a proposed new subdivision referred to as Viewmont Place. It bears the city's number LD 2025-0006 with a physical location at 9410 Mountain View Road in the city. It is proposed by Even Man of Sound Built Homes, proposing 150 single-family lots on 19.2 acres. In advance of today's hearing, I've received a staff report authored by Mr. Wiebe, who is not present today on leave, and so Andrew Kohler is appearing in his place. I have reviewed the staff report in its entirety and all of the materials that were provided with the staff report. I've also undertaken a brief site inspection as well. The attachments to the staff report are exhibits 1 through 7. The staff report itself is exhibit 8. And then yesterday or recently, I received a packet of additional public comments. Those are exhibit 9, and I did review those public comments in their entirety in advance of today's hearing. And then one more public comment in writing was received today, perhaps yesterday by the city. I received it today from Dana Allen. That becomes exhibit number 10. And again, I have reviewed public comments before today's hearing. So the purpose of today's hearing is threefold. It's to hear from city staff, further explaining their receipt and review of this application for subdivision and their recommendations as to how to proceed. Once the city staff have made their presentation, the matter turns then to the applicant to provide its own perspective to add to or subtract from what the city is suggesting. And then once those two pieces of the hearing have been completed, it's then open for public comment. All those who testify today, including city staff, will do so under oath, and those from the public will come to the podium. It's important we have a centralized place for speaking as much to memorialize your testimony. That is to be sure it's caught by the microphones, because there is a recording being kept of this hearing. And the purpose of that recording is that if anyone disagrees with my ultimate decision, that my decision would go to the Thurston County Superior Court for review. And that Superior Court judge would simply review this proceeding, not conduct his or her own proceeding. And it's therefore important that the record kept at this hearing is very accurate, so that that judge has a clear understanding of what was decided and why I reached my decision. So if you do wish to be heard, would ask, it's important that you come to the podium for that purpose. And again, that all those who do testify will do so under oath. I impose a time limit just so we move along, and so that we sort of, it aids in focusing comment and making sure that we stay on track. So I will impose a 5-minute per person time limit for public testimony. Some may think that's short. It is not. That's a long time to testify on a single subject. And finally, if you're wishing to ask a question, that is, if you're not so much wanting to speak to the project, but have a question about the project, well then please understand that all questions come to me. I sort of serve as traffic cop for those questions. So if you have a sewer question, or if you have a parks question, or if you have a schools question, the questions come to me, and I'll decide who may best answer that question. So what I'm trying to avoid is this direct dialogue between people wanting to testify and staff or the applicant. Suddenly I've lost control of the hearing, sort of becoming a spectator to my own hearing. I don't want that to happen. So the way to avoid that is that the questions come to me. I'll then pose the question to the appropriate party. One last comment that sometimes irritates people. I'm not here to irritate, but I am to inform. And it's always important to remember that hearings of this nature are not popularity contests. This is not a question of the number of people who are for or against the application. I have no interest in that. I do not keep count or keep track of the number of people who support a project and the number that oppose it. That's meaningless to me under the set of rules that control my decision making. I'm to make decisions based upon the facts as applied to the City of Yelm's land use regulations. I am to be indifferent to the popularity of a project. Some people find that troubling. I understand why they find that troubling, but it's important that everyone understand the rules in which I undertake a public hearing. I'm serving as a judge, that is. I'm not a political entity. I'm a fact-finding entity, and I'm only interested in facts and not in popularity. So with those basic points underway, let's get us started. So that would begin with city staff. Mr. Kohler, let's have you sworn. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Go ahead.
Good morning. Viewmont Place includes a property that is a undeveloped lot at 9410 Mountain View Road and an unaddressed lot directly to the east on Killian Road. Combined, the parcels are 19.2 acres. Yelm High School is within 1/4 mile of the development site, and Yelm Middle School is less than a 1 mile walk away. The site, there is a little amendment into the staff report here. The site, the original report said it had habitat for pocket gophers. It's known by city staff to have an existing population of Mazama pocket gophers. The city of Yelm is currently in process drafting a habitat conservation plan for the Mazama pocket gopher. However, this work is expected to continue through into 2027. As a result, city staff have agreed to bring the preliminary plat to the hearing examiner for approval while prohibiting any site disturbing activities until a HCP is formally adopted. This arrangement was mutually agreed upon between the applicant and city staff and has been included as a condition of approval. The notice of application was emailed and mailed to local state agencies and tribes, and also mailed to the property owners within 300 feet of the site, February 13th, 2025. This notice was also published in the Nisqually Valley News on the same date. During the public comment period, 2 comments were received. Both comments are attached to this report and summarized below. Nisqually Indian Tribe, the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer stated that he had reviewed the proposal and had no specific comments or concerns. They further requested that the tribe be kept informed if there are any inadvertent archaeological discoveries during site development. Washington State Department of Transportation expressed interest in reviewing the traffic impact analysis for the project and specifically its impact to State Route 510. In response to the comment from the Nisqually Indian Tribe, we will require that the applicant utilize an inadvertent discovery plan. And in response to the comment from WSDOT, a TIA was forwarded to their agency. The city coordinated with WSDOT to craft certain conditions of approval related to traffic mitigation. And this mitigation is discussed in more detail further in this report. Notice of the date and time of the public hearing were provided. It was posted on the project site on April 2nd and mailed to property owners within 300 feet. Also on April 2nd, posted at the city website on that same day and published in the Nisqually Valley News on April 2nd. 9 comments were received, and then including the one from Ms. Dana Allen this late last night. Most of those comments were related to traffic impact, and I'll get to the traffic impact in the mitigation measures later in this report. Also, the concern about Yelm Community Schools, and we are sympathetic and understanding of the current challenges facing our local school district. But at the same time, the accommodating growth is more in line with the public school facilities plan and their planning than as part of the development regulations with the city. The City of Yelm SEPA responsible official issued a mitigated determination of non-significance for this proposal on December 4th, 2025. The MDNS is attached and its conditions have been included as conditions of approval in the staff report. During the MDNS period, 2 comments were received. The Olympic Region Clean Air Agency commented that ORCA permit may be required for certain emergency generators and provided a reference guide for handling dust from construction projects. The second comment was sent by the Department of Ecology and provided guidance related to solid waste management, toxic cleanup, and water quality. These comments were forwarded to the applicant, and because these comments were general in nature and cited in existing regulations and standards, no additional mitigation conditions or approval conditions were drafted in response. Both comments are attached. The intent of the city's concurrency management program, as required by the Growth Management Act, is to maintain specific levels of service for water, sewer, and transportation facilities through capacity monitoring and allocation reservation procedures. The applicant is required to connect to the water main and extend it to each of the proposed residential lots. The exact water improvements required to serve the development will be identified during civil plan review, and this will satisfy the requirement of concurrency with water infrastructure. The development is required to connect and extend the main so that each proposed lot may connect to the city's sewer. The exact sewer improvements required to serve the development will be identified during civil plan review, and this will satisfy the requirement for concurrency with sewer infrastructure. The applicant prepared a traffic impact analysis to study the project's potential impact to the Yelm transportation network. The TIA is attached, and in it, it analyzes the effects that the proposal will have on certain study intersections. The 2030 forecast level of service for these study intersections are presented below, with and without the project. The city of Yelm also works with a third-party reviewer. Our consultant for this particular project, we use the firm Fair and Peers. And then WASDA also evaluated the applicant's TIA. The primary concerns identified during these traffic discussions are listed below, along with the measures in response to each. The concern 1, safe walking routes to both Yelm High School and Yelm Middle School. And our required improvement is to restripe the crosswalk over 510 at the Mountain View Road intersection. Another required improvement is to replace the existing yellow pedestrian signs at 510 and Mountain View Road with fluorescent yellow and green signs to meet school zone standards. They're also required to construct a sidewalk that will provide a pedestrian connection from the project site south along Mountain View Road, connecting to the existing sidewalk at State Route 510. There's a little bit of a gap there on that west side of the veterinary clinic that will be completed. This will require constructing a roughly 90-foot extension. Another required improvement is to install a rectangular rapid flashing beacon pedestrian activated crosswalk system south of the project site at the intersection of Killian and Coates Road. The crosswalk will provide a safe pedestrian crossing over Killian Road. And final design will be subject to the city of Yelm during that civil plan review. The second concern is the failing level of service at State Route 510 and Mountain View Road. The required action is the applicant revised the TIA to include a traffic signal warrant analysis for that intersection. The study found that based on vehicular and pedestrian volumes, a traffic signal is not warranted. The city's decision was that the city will the city will reevaluate the urban core intersections, including Mountain View Road and 510 after completion of the Yelm Loop. Construction of the loop is expected to improve traffic conditions In the urban core, considering these factors and the fact that traffic signal is not warranted, no further improvements are required at this intersection. The third concern is additional traffic at Killian Road and the South State Route 510 intersection. Motorists may choose to exit the subdivision on Killian Road to avoid delays at Mountain View Road. It's easier for cars turning left onto 510 using a signal than it is to use a stop control. So the required improvement is to pay the cost of associated with installation of a Wavetronics radar detection at Killian Road in South State Route 510. The applicant will coordinate with WSDOT and the city of Yelm as needed. The applicant will meet traffic concurrency through the payment of traffic impact fees and the installation of various improvements identified above. The required improvements have been incorporated into the conditions of approval. The fire protection, new development projects are required to contribute to the fire protection facilities plan adopted by Southeast Thurston Regional Fire Authority and endorsed by resolution of the Yelm City Council. These fire protection fees are calculated based on the square footage of each proposed building. These fees will be assessed individually for each proposed building and are due prior to the issuance of any building permit. This will establish concurrency for fire protection. The placement of new fire hydrants is subject to final review and approval during civil plan review by the City of Yelm Fire Marshal and Southeast Thurston Regional Fire Authority. For schools, new development projects are required to make a contribution to Yelm Community Schools as identified in the most current version of the Yelm Community Schools Capital Facilities Plan adopted by school district and endorsed by resolution of the Yelm City Council. School impact fees are assessed for each single family residence. School impact fees are due prior to the issuance of a building permit for each residence, and this will establish concurrency for schools. For frontage improvements and site access, any subdivision or combination of subdivisions of 25 or more housing units must provide more than one vehicular access from an arterial or collector street. The proposed subdivision meets this requirement with new roads connecting Killian and Mountain View Road. Killian's an arterial and Mountain View is a collector. The applicant shall improve frontage along Killian Road and Mountain View Road to the appropriate city standard and construct new internal roadways that meet local access residential standards. New roads shall be made public streets with the required right-of-way dedication. For critical areas, all of Yelm is a critical aquifer recharge area, and the applicant must adhere to the most recent stormwater management manual for Western Washington. There are no other critical areas or flood hazard identified at the project site. Because the project site is known to have a population of Mazama pocket gophers, no pocket gopher report was required. No land disturbing activities are permitted on site until the city of Yelm has adopted its conservation plan. In terms of zoning and design standards, the applicant seeks approval of a planned residential development overlay, which is an allowed use within the R6 zone. Rounded to the nearest whole number, the site's proposed density is 6 units per acre. For a planned residential development, a PRD is exempt from the specific design requirements of a standard subdivision. The applicant has proposed a reduced rear yard setback of 20 feet through the PRD. The R6 zone requires a 25-foot setback as standard, but with the PRD, they're requesting that 20-foot setback be applied. The applicant will meet all other zoning and design standards of the Yelm Municipal Code, and no density bonus has been provided for this PRD. The criteria for development are not very clearly defined in the Yelm Municipal Code, but it must be better than that resulting in a traditional development. Elsewhere in y'all municipal code, description of PRD zoning overlay, the code lists amenities superior to those found in general developments. The city worked with the applicant to create framework for an approvable PRD and agreed upon enhancing the community open spaces and provide amenities that are far and above those found in a non PRD development and meeting above the threshold of the minimum 5% dedication. The applicant submitted the PRD site plan that provided 43% more open space than the minimum. The open space is spread out over 4 pocket parks of various sizes, a tot lot, and a pedestrian trail providing a connection to the existing Mountain View Meadows. That subdivision is directly to the north, and the open space tracts will be privately owned and maintained, but will be open to the general public. Parking. Residential uses require 2 spaces per residential unit. This is typically achieved with the standard driveway approach. When applying for a building permit for each lot, the applicant will show adequate parking for each single-family residence. Jumping to reclaimed water. Chapter 6 of the development guidelines establish requirements for connection to the city's reclaimed water system. There is a reclaimed water utility line nearby on Mountain View Road. Connection to the reclaimed water line is required per Chapter 6 of the City of Yelm development guidelines. This reclaimed water must be used to irrigate all open space areas. And for landscaping, Yale Municipal Code establishes minimum requirements and standards for landscaping for new development projects. A preliminary landscape plan was submitted with the application that shows adequate streetscape landscaping, perimeter landscaping, and stormwater landscaping. If necessary, they're proposing underground, so there's a little bit of flexibility with that. That will be finalized during civil plan review. Section 18.14.080 of the Yelm Municipal Code requires written findings prior to a decision on a planned residential development. The applicant has established that the proposed PRD is consistent with the goals and policies of the Yelm Comprehensive Plan. It meets the minimum requirements for fire, life, safety. It provides adequate provision for utilities and other public services, roads, streets, and sidewalks necessary to serve the needs of the development. There are no unavoidable impacts to adjoining streets and neighborhoods. It creates no greater burden on present and public utilities and services than would result in traditional development. And it is better than that, resulting in from a traditional development. The Public Services Department recommends that preliminary subdivision be approved subject to the following conditions.
You don't need to list all of it.
Okay. And that concludes Clayton's report.
Thank you, Mr. Kohler. A number of questions. And they won't be in any particular order. As to safe walking routes, you've explained how students traveling or walking to either the middle school or the high school will be provided for through these conditions. How far away is the nearest elementary school? What is it?
The nearest elementary school to this subdivision would probably be Southworth Elementary.
And roughly how far?
Oof, at
Approximately
2 miles.
Okay. And do you know what the intent will be as to providing busing for them? Will be there a collected busing location? What's proposed for collecting those students and getting them to Southwood?
To the elementary school, I would believe that they would be bused.
I'm sure there'll be a site. You don't know if there'll be a centralized busing location.
I do not know.
Other staff are shaking their head no. So, okay. Tribal questions. The nearest tribes have expressed no particular concerns, but just out of curiosity, what's the history of discovering cultural resources in this prairie? Have nearby properties discovered important cultural resources? Is this open prairie area commonly finding cultural resources?
I don't know if I would violate any,
Well, let
Yeah.
me clarify.
Yeah.
To the extent that important resources have been discovered and are being maintained as important and protected, you do not have to tell me about them. But to the extent that there is a general discovery that might be relevant to what to anticipate on this site, I think that's a fair question.
Yeah, we reach out to DAP, the Department of Archaeological and Historical Preservation, and the surrounding tribes for every project. They're sent a notice of application, and the SEPA determination, or provided an opportunity to comment and request a cultural resource survey if it comes up as a high likelihood that cultural resources will be found. Um, in terms of other projects within the city, we have received quite a few requests for cultural resource surveys to be conducted. To my knowledge, since in the last 2.5 years, I have not had a project that has found cultural resource.
And the fact that the tribe did not seek one in this case is suggestive, highly suggestive that they don't anticipate important resources on this site.
Correct.
And I do recognize the challenge of asking you questions that could disclose important resources only to then invite people to go look for them. And I don't want to do that. So let's talk about pocket gophers. Where do we go with this project relative to pocket gophers, and what becomes the remedy for protecting this protected species on a known site? What to anticipate in the way of a habitat plan that will deal with a known population of gophers?
I will try to answer this question. If I might need to call on Mr. Gary Cooper at some point. But so the city of Yelm is working with the Department of Fish and Wildlife, both federal and state agencies, and we are in a draft. We have a draft HCP that is being reviewed by the services right now. And there's probably an expectation that it'll be complete within 1 to 2 years. We are in the process of acquiring land to accommodate the HCP. It's roughly, Gary, correct me if I'm wrong, roughly 500 acres of gopher habitat in which gophers are present. And so we're in the middle of that process, and we would have reason to believe that the HCP will be complete prior to a preliminary plat expiring. The preliminary plat is valid for 5 years, and we expect the habitat conservation plan to be complete within.
So as a result, this project, even if approved, won't see a spade turned over for at least 2 years then.
Yeah, I wouldn't say 2 years exactly, but until a habitat conservation plan has been accepted by the services.
Okay. And I want to be careful about not pre-guessing as to what that plan will provide, but is it likely to anticipate some sort of credit system similar to salmon restoration, where you buy credits in a habitat improvement site to offset the impacts at the development site?
Very similar. I can't speak as much to salmon, but I know our habitat conservation plan would be very similar to what is currently being implemented in Thurston County, where there is a debit and credit system.
Okay. And with respect to this project, the city is in agreement with the notion that Well, how does this project get conditioned to make certain that pocket gophers are adequately addressed through that plan? What will be the connecting mechanism between this project and that plan? I probably asked a question that's very poorly asked. If we simply acknowledge that this project, if this subdivision is approved, but it's approved subject to it's subject to the city establishing a habitat conservation plan. What will that plan do to make certain that this project complies with it?
With how our review process goes, we go land use, which is here, and then civil plans will determine where.
Let me just again. 2 years from now, the city establishes a plan for pocket gophers. Now, this project comes back to you and say, okay, we're ready to go ahead. What does being ready to go ahead mean? What will they have to do relative to pocket gophers at that time?
There would be a fee associated based on the per acre impact. And with subdivisions like this one, that the HCP accounts that 19.2 acres will be of gopher habitat will be effectively, no longer. So they would have to mitigate and pay for 19.2 acres of impacted habitat.
Okay. Your presentation mentioned stormwater and the conditions of project approval, proposed stormwater maintenance. I don't find stormwater anywhere in this project. There's no discussion of it. There's no indication of it on the site map. How is stormwater being managed for this project?
The stormwater proposed is underground storm. And I believe those are tracks B and G.
Because there isn't a stormwater report in the materials, and there's no indications on the site maps of stormwater that I can see. Now, some of that's very small print. Am I missing something on the site plans?
There might either that or it wasn't included.
There is zero discussion of stormwater in this staff report, and there is no stormwater report.
So a stormwater report will be reviewed during civil plan review. In the preliminary stage, what we're really looking for with stormwater is the locations of them. And yeah, the stormwater report and the stormwater facility would be reviewed during civil plan approval.
So B and G, are those so underneath the two playgrounds?
Yes.
So
That's my understanding of it. Yeah, we have our civil review engineer here as well, Reza.
okay. And I guess if I seem irritated, it's other cities give me the stormwater reports. Yelm tends to not to. And I do find them valuable, even if they are technical and even if they're ultimately approved by engineering staff. Nonetheless, they resolve a great many questions as to flows, location, impacts to adjoining properties. In Yelm, that's not the same issue because of its poor soils. But in most cities, Olympia right now, I'm dealing with a very contentious issue because of poorly draining properties and the impacts of development. So it is valuable to receive the
Absolutely.
sure. Getting back to my questions and off my soapbox. 20-foot rear yards are very small rear yards. I assume the city feels comfortable with that size of a rear yard. in return for what it's getting, which are improved amenities, a greater number of playgrounds and recreational facilities. But does the city have any other concerns about rear yards that are about as far as you could spit?
So the approved master plan community up in Tahoma Terra, is a very similar looking subdivision than this one. And they have 20-foot rear yard setbacks. The planning department, will be will be looking to reduce rear yard setbacks from 25 feet to 20 feet in this zone. Right.
So the
Taking
city,
that to
the city is moving to a policy that is consistent with this design then.
correct.
Okay.
And many surrounding, like Olympia, rear yard setbacks are in some zones 10 feet.
Okay. A connectivity of city streets. This project is not proposed to connect to its adjoining neighborhoods. I assume that's intentional in this location, in that you're trying less to connect to neighborhoods and instead collect a mountain to connect to Mountain View and Killian, and make sure that all traffic is flowing out to those two streets and less internally. Is that a fair conclusion?
Yeah, that would be a fair conclusion. Also, it depends on site, the location of the parcel in relation to its geography. This one, it made a lot of sense to connect east and west.
Sure. It would have made perhaps sense when, what's the name of that?
The one to the north.
Yes.
Mountain View Meadow. There's two that are really close to each other, Mountain Meadows and Mountain View Meadows. I believe the one to the north is Mountain View Meadows.
So when the one to the north was approved, it would have been interesting had it provided connection to this development. Not having done so, it did provide a trail connection. It didn't provide vehicular connection. Had it done so, it would have provided a greater interaction of the two neighborhoods. And interaction is important for a lot of reasons. Public safety, it's important for socializing, it's important for allowing safe walking routes. It does a lot of things. It's sort of late in the day for this one because the door's already been closed on this one because of the way in which the development to the north was designed. But it would have been preferred that these two neighborhoods connect to each other. So
I agree. I don't know exactly what the intent was with, Mountain View Meadows. If the code currently, would require a connection like that. I don't know if that was written in code at the time of Mountain View Meadows or not. But I completely agree with that sentiment of wanting subdivisions to connect to each other.
and in this case,
Oh, thank you. With Mountain View Meadows, Viewmont Place was zoned commercial when Viewmont Place was approved, or I'm sorry, Mountain View Meadows. So that,
all right.
that explains that.
So at the time, there was no desire to connect a residential neighborhood to a proposed commercial area.
Correct.
Didn't make any sense, and in fact, may have been deemed as a risk. And so, okay, that makes
That's right. Yeah.
much better sense. Is street parking expected along the internal streets?
Yeah, street parking as part of the local access residential standard, there's parking on both sides of the street.
In terms of landscaping, I do note the preliminary plan, and I do note that it proposes street trees. Here's my pet peeve. And many of the developments in Yelm propose street trees, and then the houses get sold and the owners promptly cut down the trees. That's annoying me. And I think my answer is going to be that I require the street trees to be maintained by the homeowners association and not removed. It's making it, I understand individual choices because people are being put on tight, small lots where space is at a premium and those trees are eating space. But those trees are also a critical resource to that neighborhood. And so individual choices are affecting the community choice. And it's degrading some of these newly built communities in Yelm by cutting down all the street trees. And so I'm going to require that the trees be maintained and not be allowed to be cut down. So if I approve this project, one of the conditions will be that trees have to stay. So
Yeah, and it would be unlawful for somebody to take down a
it
tree.
may be, but if you go to the neighborhood to the north, there's a lot of missing trees. And if you go to the other neighborhoods further north, there are missing trees. Maybe in certain areas, the trees, maybe I'm interpreting what I'm seeing. Maybe in some places because of corners or curves or whatever, they're not located, but it looks like a few have gone. And in other neighborhoods to the northeast, north of downtown, there are whole neighborhoods that have lost their trees. So I want to be sure that trees are being maintained. They add immeasurably to these new neighborhoods. So, okay. I was going to have questions about left turn lanes, but I did notice in the traffic impact analysis that a left turn lane analysis was undertaken on Mountain View and found not to be needed. There already exists a left turn lane on Killian, and so we don't need to address left turns into the neighborhood. If I lived in this neighborhood, I'm going out to Killian to get out to 510. I'm not going to mess with Mountain View. And so this mitigation that requires radar, what's this going to do?
Yeah, I'm not a traffic engineer, but apparently what it'll do is fix or address the timing of the Killian light to, yeah, it's a little bit above, beyond my expertise, but
So it's not counting somehow. It's telling the rest of the traffic system how to behave because of traffic on Killian.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
That was kind of a conversation between the traffic engineer and WASDOT to,
But suffice to say that somehow that system is regarded as aiding in providing a more efficient movement of that traffic from Killian on to 510.
correct. Yeah.
Okay. The packet of public comments received just recently, there is a common theme of Yelm needs to slow down. Yelm needs to catch its breath. It needs to. It's become too popular. It's become too fast growing. It isn't able to keep up with itself. Somehow through this project or others, there needs to be a slowdown. I'm paraphrasing and condensing, but to that public comment or public sentiment, how would the city respond?
Yeah, it was a great place to live, a great place to work, and a lot of people want to come here and be a part of that. There is a request for like a building moratorium to address the current infrastructure needs. Yelm is a unique space. Washington is a unique place for public infrastructure, and we are taking pretty aggressive infrastructure improvements, including the improvement at Longmire and 510. We just completed an intersection control evaluation to determine if a light or a roundabout would be better suited there. The Elm Loop is projected to go to bid next month. And yeah, we're doing a downtown, basically a Yelm Avenue 507, 510 corridor study that will view and analyze all of the intersections that join into 510 and 507, including Mountain View and Killian and several intersections that, are difficult to get on and off of 507, 510. So while we are experiencing a lot of growth, we're also aggressively trying to mitigate the traffic related issues.
Okay. And I guess partly responsible, while a moratorium has been discussed, there is nothing of that nature in place right now. Such that as long as a project otherwise meets all city development requirements, there's nothing imposing a moratorium on it then, correct?
Yeah, no moratorium is being considered.
Mr. Cooper, you look like you would like to testify.
Larry Cooper, Planning and Building Manager. There's another piece to the growth issue, and you may be aware, but the Growth Management Act was amended, I believe, in 2023, House Bill 1220. Some language was added to the city's responsibility to accommodate growth. GMA used to say the city must plan for future growth. It now says plan for and accommodate growth. And we've been given some very specific direction on what that means. So we were required to participate in with the other cities and Thurston County in what's called a housing allocation requirement. And through that, each jurisdiction was given a target number of housing units that they need to provide over the next 20 years. Yelm's number was 7,504 new units over the next 20 years. We are required through policy and development regulations to try to accommodate that growth. As far as the moratorium is concerned, I mean, I'm certainly aware, there are some pretty strict requirements for when you decide that you're going to put a moratorium on something. And in this instance, we don't see this as an emergency. So,
a very good response. Thank you. That's the questions I have, Mr. Kohler. Would that conclude then the city's presentation?
Yes, that concludes it.
All right. Having heard from the city, we'll now turn to the applicant. I see Mr. Mann being present remotely. Am I to hear from Mr. Mann or from other representatives? Mr. Mann, what should I anticipate in the way of the applicant's presentation?
Good morning. Yeah, so I'll do a brief presentation. I have with me today both Kurt Wilson, who's also with Soundbill Homes or Copper Ridge LLC, who's the developer here, who likely will have some comments. And I brought our engineer, Scott Call with AHBL, who can speak to some of the more specific engineering kind of details, one being the stormwater question. But I'll speak to the stormwater question that you had previously and then let Scott fill in some details.
All right, I'll slow you down briefly just to make sure that we're under oath.
Yep.
So let's have you sworn. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay. So kind of just running through some of the questions that you had and kind of some general responses. So certainly this site was reviewed for cultural resources. And if you look at the DAP wizard analysis, this site was found to have a very low probability of cultural resources, and I think that's why the tribes kind of reflect that in their response, and ultimately an appropriate condition of an inadvertent discovery plan was applied to the plat. So I believe that's one of the conditions in the hearing examiner or in the staff report today. So if at any point during site development anything is discovered, obviously we implement the state level documentation and findings recording with both DAP and the tribe. So that's kind of how this has played out with regard to cultural resources. You questioned about the pocket gophers and how this ensured that this application is basically accountable to the habitat plan. So I believe SEPA mitigation measure number 3 speaks to basically this project not allowed to proceed with any site development until such time that the pocket gopher mitigation is in place, and this project will be subject to that pocket gopher mitigation at that time. So stormwater was provided, a preliminary stormwater report was provided, and I'm not sure, I believe Drew and the city can provide that to you for your review. But effectively, the soils were reviewed here and found to be, highly infiltratable. And so there are several localized infiltration galleries that will be constructed as part of this project. And I'll let Scott speak to that a little bit more in detail. But with regard to...
Is that what happens to the development to the north?
Sorry.
Is that what happens in the neighborhood?
For stormwater? I don't know, but I believe Scott would be able to speak to that. I believe
is that your development, Mr. Mann, or someone else's?
Someone else's, yeah.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I wouldn't know. But I believe Scott Call actually was the engineer on that project as well, so he may be able to speak to that. Kind of going through this list, but 20-foot rear yards, in an urban setting, 20-foot rear yards are actually still pretty amenable for yards. I know, in terms of more suburban, rural, you start to see bigger yards, but as the city grows, and this is a fairly walkable community to the downtown, those 20-foot rear yards are pretty standard or amenable for the owners. So street trees, one of the items you brought up was, the street trees getting removed. That's an interesting thing. I have not seen that happening in any of our communities that we develop, primarily because the street trees are actually in the right of way. So they're owned by the city. I know the grass and the trees are typically managed and maintained by the property owner directly adjacent to them. However, if those are getting removed, that's an enforcement action that the city would be responsible for. So that's kind of, again, if you look at, let's see, sheet C21 of the plan set, you can see the neighborhood collector and the neighborhood, the road section effectively, and it shows that all those trees are actually in a planter strip that's in the city right of way. Let's see. I think the comment about, or the public comment about a slowdown for City of Elm, I believe Gary answered that pretty well. Certainly, if there's a concern that the city's growing too fast, the residents are able to engage in that civic conversation with their city council and push for those changes as they see fit. But it's difficult in today's climate, like Gary mentioned, that the state's saying, hey, a lot of cities have avoided growth, and now the state is effectively saying, hey, we all need to account for growth in our plans. And so that's why these cities oftentimes are taking these numbers and trying to figure out how to accomplish that, and it spreads out across the city. And that's where zoning and densities are applied, and we've met that requirement here with this project. As noted before, open space. So the overall open space for this project is 1.3 acres. Pretty unique. Normally a project of this size, we would still only do just a little pocket park with a playground, like a small tot lot playground. However, if you look at the landscape plan, you'll see that we've gone above and beyond there, that we really wanted to make sure that recreation for this community would encompass all age groups. So we've got a pretty significant improvement here. We've got a full basketball court in tract G. And then I believe we have a full pickleball court in tract B. And then in tract D, we're providing a tot lot or a play structure. And then combine that with the walkability with the neighboring community. We tried to create as much connectivity as possible. As mentioned before, the road connection was not possible at the time the northern property was developed, but there will be connectivity between the communities, and our parks or recreation spaces are required per the conditions to be available to the public. So this is not no signage saying these are only available to the Viewmont Place PRD is expected. These are publicly available for any community member to come and enjoy. So pickleball courts are really popular right now, and I believe when we work with the city, it's kind of seen as a positive win. So putting that pickleball court will be a positive element for the community. Kind of going through some of the other questions, we expect that students will walk from here to both Yelm High School and Yelm Middle School. And as conditioned, we believe that this plat meets the requirements for safe walking conditions for those schools. For Southworth Elementary School, it's about 2 miles east or west of this site. The bus has the ability to pull through this community, so there's no turnarounds required. Effectively, you can enter through either Killian or Mountain View and exit through Killian or Mountain View. And if that were not the case, there certainly could stop on Mountain View or Killian and pick up on both ends of this community. So there is definite connectivity through the community to allow for bus pickups and getting those kids to school. Other than that, I mean, potable water is connecting to the city water, connecting to city sewer will pay the connection fees and system development charges as required. And I believe as conditioned, the plat meets the requirements and standards that the city set forth. Real quick, Scott, I'd like to give a chance to speak to the stormwater conditions and stormwater plan. And then from there, we'll have Kurt weigh in with any thoughts he has.
Thank you, Mr. Mann. I don't have any questions for you, so we will turn to Mr. Call. Mr. Call, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Mr. Mann has invited you to provide further information on stormwater management. What do you think would be helpful to know?
Yeah, so my name is Scott Call. I'm a civil engineer with AHBL. Most of the stormwater in Yelm it's very gravelly soils. We had a geotech do an analysis to figure out what the appropriate infiltration rate is. We've put below grade gravel infiltration trenches to manage stormwater. All pollution generating surfaces are treated appropriately before they go into the ground to protect the aquifer. So there's adequate treatment vaults, storm filter vaults provided before we do infiltration. And then all the homes will have on-lot infiltration systems for their roofs. So there'll be, AHBL was involved with the design on the subdivision north of us, and the water is managed the same way. We've monitored for groundwater to make sure there's adequate separation for our facilities. So all the water will be retained on site. No water will be directed to a neighbor or offsite.
It's interesting to go from community to community, where in so many communities, stormwater is the single biggest issue for any subdivision. In Yelm, it's probably the least significant issue. It's sometimes hard to make that transition. So the actual effectiveness of the existing facilities in the development to the north, how is that system working?
I haven't been engaged after construction to know, but I'm not aware of any complaints or concerns.
And anything on this site that suggests that
No.
the development to the north is impacting it in any way?
No, there was no evidence of that during testing or anything like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Call. And then, Mr. Mann, you felt that your other expert would be useful?
Yeah, just Kurt. Yep.
Yeah, Kurt Wilson here. Sorry, I am seem to be having difficulties getting my video to work. It's telling me to pick another setting in our video option settings, but I don't have any other options, so I'm sorry. I can raise my hand and go under oath if you'd like.
Well, I'll have you sworn. Do you swear or tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And your area of expertise?
I'm with the developer. Evan and I work together on the project, and I was just going to provide comment as to the growth in Yelm. And yeah, we're doing a lot of business in Yelm, doing a lot of building and developing. And as Evan mentioned earlier, the state's putting mandates on local jurisdictions to absorb their portions of growth, and what is happening here, we hope, is that by increasing the supply in Yelm, it's going to create more competition, and actually building some smaller building lots will help keep square footages of homes down, where there will be more competitive pricing and opportunities for more people to afford housing. As supply gets constrained, it's simple supply and demand. We see prices, escalate because of lack of options and competition. So, while folks don't like growth, they also don't necessarily like the cost of housing and not being able to afford the American dream. So, we've got to actually applaud Yelm in the efforts they're making to improve infrastructure, and deal with the growth that they're trying to absorb, and they're being proactive in that effort. So I just wanted to make comments to that effect. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. And so, Mr. Mann, will that conclude the applicant's presentation?
Yes, it does. And again, if there are any questions, we're available.
Okay, thank you. And no other questions. So we've heard from city staff, we've heard from the applicant and its team, which brings us then to the public hearing portion of this project. I don't know if the city was preparing. One of the challenges of hybrid hearings is trying to figure out who is where and who wants to be heard. So we'll do this systematically. We'll begin with the in-person participants, and then we'll turn to the remote participants. So as to those who are present, Mr. Kohler, was there a sign-up sheet or some other way of indicating?
There is, yeah. Would you like it, or?
Yes. Thank you. And again, just a reminder that if you signed up and then reconsider, you don't have to actually testify. If you didn't sign up, but then suddenly think that you might like to, that's fine as well. This list is not fixed in stone. The goal be to make certain that all those who wish to be heard are given that opportunity. And so the first I have is Scott Weber. Good morning.
Morning. My name is Scott Weber. I live the north side of town, actually just outside of the city limits of Yelm. So I'm Thurston County. I'm just north of
Right.
They're just north of the high school.
Mr. Weber, let's have you stop and be sworn first. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Go ahead.
I just want to start out by saying that I am in no way opposing growth in Yelm. I'm all for the growth, as the builders have stated, for those exact reasons. So there are questions many of the residents have, and I didn't say, there's in-depth studies done, but my main concern really, and again, with me just living on the north side of town, is the traffic. The traffic already with our current situation in Yelm being just the 2-lane highway going in and out of Yelm, 510, 507, is terrible right now at the peak hours of time with school, as well as with folks going to and from work at those peak hours. I'm sure traffic studies have been done. I'd be curious what our current level of service is on the roads right now.
LOSF.
With that,
I'm sorry, LOSF on
yes,
Mountain View, LOSE on Killian.
yes, and not so much of those roads too, but the main roads that those feed into that this subdivision would be.
I think I misspoke. I think those are projected LOS. I think I got ahead of myself. Current levels are better than that, but projected levels, if without the loop, do recognize failing intersections.
Right, and that is my concern. And then as far as the loop, I'm not sure how much, and again, I'm sure studies have been done. I'm not privy to those. I have not studied those with that level of service. So I know when the Yelm Loop gets completed, I'm assuming it will help 510, 507 quite a bit, but it still dumps it at the very end of the south part of Yelm there by Walmart, which will still congest 507, 510. The results of that study, again, I know it's a prediction. Just tying this in with the whole Yelm needs to slow down comment from earlier. I think kind of what that means is I don't mind the growth. I think most community members don't mind the growth. And we understand that it's just a part of being in a small town. But the slow down part could very well mean before we accept the influx of the new homes, which is great for the growth of Yelm, can we get the infrastructure built up to accept that? Is just the overall general concern. I know widening 510, 507 is probably out of the question. There's a lot of land would have to be taken from local residents to do that. But that is the overall concern really is just the flow through. And then you deal also with emergency response as that growth happens, the delays in the emergency response as well. With that, it's just one of the big concerns of traffic. With the current state of it, I'm not sure that that loop is really going to help that much on 510, 507, especially with the over 7,000 homes that we predict in the next 10 years.
Thank you, Ms. Weber. Next is Richard Jones. Morning. Let's have you sworn. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Take off my hat, sorry.
Thank you.
Forgive my morning here. Thanks for this early meeting there, by the way. Like I said, my name's Richard Jones, Rick Jones. I've been part of the problem for the growth in Yelm. I was stationed in Japan, and my last duty station was here at Fort Lewis at the time. And so I moved here in 2001 with my family, fell in love with the area and stayed. So I was part of the growth issue. So I've been here since 2001 and seen it grow tremendously. We've actually owned 3 homes in the city, mostly on this side, Prairie Vista. And then we're in the center of town by Fort Stevens. We just bought a home. Actually, the trail that connects the neighborhood, that's my house. But it wouldn't necessarily be the reason why I'm here. It's just, you mentioned about providing facts and not get involved with feelings and opinions and stuff. However, I just wanted to reiterate a couple of things that were already mentioned by the city and by the builders. As Scott had led out to, I'm not against growth at all. I love our community, and I think we can do a better job overall of managing. I understand the Growth Management Act. However, there's responsibility, inherent responsibility with managing that growth. 7,000 something homes in the next 10 years is a lot of homes to come in here without the infrastructure. The Yelm Loop is here and it's coming. I've been here since 2001. It's coming. So I know it is. Eventually we'll help ease some of the constraints on the road and on the infrastructure itself. With the Solo Bridge leading into Pierce County as our only point of entry to get across and through. We've seen what happens as facts. We've seen what happens when there is an accident, incident, train derailment. The shutdown I-5 is something happens in the Scully Bridge. We know it's coming through Yelm. We know there's no other way around. It has to come through Yelm and over that bridge, vice versa. So the infrastructure itself is my concern about keeping up with it. And the traffic itself. The city's doing understanding the future with we talked about the schools. My kids went to Southworth Middle School and high school here. So there are some non-walking communities. Southworth is one of those non-walking communities. The kids have to be bused there. So that's adding extra buses onto the streets and navigating to the neighborhoods if they choose to do so. At the current one we live at, they pick up on Killian and Mountain Views without having to go into the subdivision itself. But again, it's added stress onto the current infrastructure that we have. So we say like slow roll and everything else. Let's get the infrastructure in place, moving and going forward before we continue to have things like that. The other concern I had was, and I'm glad it was addressed earlier. I didn't know it was going to be addressed. I have a fact, seen with my own eyes, all 4 of them. There's gophers. I just retired civil service out at Fort Lewis, worked with Public Works. And the environmental is a big piece of everything out there with the training and housing and everything else that we build. And birds and it could just shut down something quick. And I've seen how it has shut down things. It shut down our airfield extension. So the gophers themselves, I've seen them, they are out there. It's interesting to hear how long, I didn't know what was gonna happen with that. Just knowing my knowledge, it happens on the federal side of things, of how that's gonna happen. So I'm glad to see that there is something in place to address that and everything else to ensure that they are moved to a hospital for them. The other thing part with the city itself, just, with the building of subdivisions and added stress on the schools that we currently have. I understand like next week, or next month rather, being long, will be a joint session of the city council and the school board, if I believe that's right. Yeah, so you can see the collaboration occurring within the city itself. So I think those are some of the things that are in the right place. And again, the management part of the Growth Management Act, I'm not saying irresponsible and just throw everything in there, but I've seen phases in other communities around us where you've seen the management growth actually, the infrastructure's put in place. Go down to place example in Arizona, we went down, we built the road network and put schools in, and then they built the houses around it. So everything was already put in place prior to the building and development of residential and or commercial things. I understand we're kind of constrained around here with what we have. We have 2 road networks basically coming in and out. But there has to be something done. To leave 2 cars per, that's 100, that's 300 cars coming in, average 300. Somehow we get 2.5 kids. There's always got to be a 0.5 on something. So I think it's 2.5 when I was reading that, some of the studies. And so 2 cars, 2.5 kids added in. That's a significant amount of population with no infrastructure improvement occurring.
Thank you.
And the other thing I only had, sir, is I could address it. I live right there. I never received a mailing on 2 April. I haven't received anything. I live right there.
I don't control the mailing, but there is a requirement of giving notice within a certain distance of the project site. That's determined by the city's mapping system as to what tax parcels are triggered. It's unclear why you may not have received.
I mean, we found out about a neighbor walking and put it on our community page, our HOA page, said, hey, there's a public hearing and everything else. We could put comments and stuff, whatever you like.
And also, something went out because a number of people responded. So they're
Probably me, sorry.
no.
Just put out the public knowledge to.
Oh, okay. So maybe that was it. Maybe instead of receiving notice through the city, it was received through the community because something generated community response. But perhaps there was some limitation on the giving a public notice. I did notice the signs when I drove by.
Yes.
There are public signs of the project. But yes, it's important that there be notice as well. It's usually a 200 to 400 distance measured from the perimeter of the site. And clearly, if you're next door, you're within that. Even if you have a big lot, you're within it. So I'll invite the city to review its system to make sure that notice is being provided.
And just like I said in closing, so just again, it's just the infrastructure is my only issue. The
Understand.
growth is coming in. I got, we had a lot of good commercial businesses to this city and kept some of the mom and pop shops to sustain things.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jones.
One quick comment I forgot to mention.
Quick,
So I need to, yes, very quick.
okay.
Mr. Mann, and the builders, and this is really tied into you. I'm sure you're paying impact fees, right? Traffic specific impact fees. This just goes along with the infrastructure per home, I'm assuming. Is there anything that the city or the county will provide to the public on how specifically those fees will be applied to our current problem? In other words, or is this kind of a, hey, good, we're going to allow this development to be made. We're going to take those fees
Well,
and pay for past problems.
what I'll do is just invite you to have that conversation with the city at the conclusion of the hearing, because it's not directly tied to my decision making. I am not to consider how funds that are collected are used. Therefore, that testimony isn't relevant to the scope of the decisions that I make. But it's certainly something that you're entitled to better understand. It's just that it would be best if it was outside the context of this hearing. So,
Understand?
okay, all right.
We're happy to
Quick. Just quick.
talk with you about it as well.
The next individual I have is Seamus Vodka.
Oh,
that was mispronounced, but that's okay.
I apologize. How should I pronounce that?
Oh, you don't got to. You could just call me Donald. That's okay. Quite frankly, hello. Okay, so
I'm going to slow you down for a minute like I did the others. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do so solemnly swear.
Go ahead.
Okay, so like, I think that shit, I mean, sorry. Y'all, I'm nervous. It's my first time speaking anyway. I think that should be like, okay. So hear me out right now. So Yelm's wanting to grow more, right? Like, be real. But like, you could turn that into a park, you know, like not even a park, like a walking, like a hike trail, you know? And like, that would attract more people and it would stop, you know, the golfers. That would help them. And then build more neighborhoods in other places. Quite frankly,
It's an excellent point, but let's explore that. It's worthy of an answer because it's a common feeling. You're not alone in that thought, and not just in this application, but in a great many where people often who live next door or who simply drive by or who live in the community and say, my goodness, this is a beautiful piece of property. Why is it being turned into houses? Why can't it stay just the way it is? That's not an unreasonable question, but it needs to be examined in the context of our land use system. This sort of becomes a civics class. Bear with me. We, in our federal constitution and in the Washington state constitution, both of which have provisions that apply directly. And in our federal constitution, it's the Fifth Amendment to it, which requires that there be what's called due process. Over the years, that concept has been carefully examined and discussed and thought about. And one of the things that the U.S. Supreme Court, as well as our Washington State Supreme Court, both agree on is that invokes protections to that landowner. And that landowner, the person who owns that land, is entitled to be protected just as the people around that owner are protected. And that to the extent that that person otherwise would be entitled to develop their land, that right to develop cannot be taken away just because others would like to see it preserved. And that sometimes doesn't sit well because you look at a piece of property and it's beautiful and it's, why cut down a 120-year-old tree to build a house? But that landowner's rights have been clearly declared to be protected unless there is a specific regulation that precludes that development and that there is a good public reason. And so just as the people next door were entitled to have their house built, generally that due process requirements say that this person is entitled to have their house built. Now I'm simplifying that a little bit, but not a lot. And so it's what gets in the way of your suggestion in that there are to deny this private landowner of the right to develop altogether so that it's preserved would be what's called a taking. That's a concept that's a little different, but it's a really, really important one that effectively our court is saying if you did that, you were taking something away from that landowner and not giving them anything in return. And that's unconstitutional. So that's why there is this challenge. And so it's a legitimate point, but from a constitutional standpoint, the suggestion has a problem. And I hope that helps. But I do appreciate the sentiment.
Yeah. Okay. I was just saying that,
No, it's a great point. Thank you.
Hey, good ideas. Put me on the city council.
There you go. Thank you.
Quite frankly, I'll become mayor of Young. It'll be beautiful.
All right. So we've heard from those who have signed up in person. So I need to turn to those appearing remotely. And do we have anyone who is appearing remotely other than
Double check, but I don't believe so.
There's no attendance, just the panelists.
Yeah, no
Okay.
Would it be possible to have one more person today?
It certainly would be. Yes. There is no limitation on the number of participants. So good morning.
Morning.
And your name?
Rogan Tigan.
How do I spell each?
Rogan. And then Tigan, Teigen.
Okay. Ms. Tigan, let's have you sworn. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Go ahead.
So I live by State Farm. State Farm is literally my neighbor, right across from the middle school. It is about a 20-minute walk to school, but I take the city bus. So my main concern is the city bus is already late most days. It is set to come at 7:09, but comes usually like 7:17. School for us starts at 7:25. I get there by 7:20. My class is across campus and it is about a 5-minute walk, so I am usually tardy. My concern is if we put more houses in the area that we are discussing about, how the traffic would affect the flow of the city bus, Route 94, and how late people who ride the bus who have no option to walk that would have to ride the city bus, how late they would also be to classes.
That's a very interesting question. It's one that I've not, I've done hundreds of hearings. And many different impacts come, impacts to the timing of a city bus system is a legitimate question. It's never come up before. And so I'll perhaps turn to staff in a minute. One of the things I try to do is be transparent in my decision making. I try not to be mysterious. I try to let people know where I'm going with my decisions so that they can better understand what might be important to me and therefore how they should shape their testimony accordingly. And so in that goal, an attempt to be transparent, as I was listening to this legitimate question, I was trying to fold it into my process. Because it's important to understand I'm not the city. I am an independent party who is empowered to grant certain types of land uses. But I don't get to tell the city what to do. I don't get to tell the schools what to do. I don't get to tell the police. I don't get to tell the fire department. I don't get to tell city staff. I don't have control over anyone. I simply get to decide whether certain construction should be allowed to go forward. So while I can't tell anyone what to do, if certain conditions aren't met, I'm not going to approve a permit. So while I'm not telling anyone to do, I'm making clear that if they don't do certain things, well, then I simply won't grant a permit. But in your instance, I'm struggling to make a connection between what I can do and the problem you're encountering or that others may encounter. So I hope I'm being clear in that while I'm very much interested in it, just as some of the other speakers, I explained that some things fall outside my control. This one may as well. I would hope that the public bus system is sensitive enough and reactive enough that as it sees a changing ridership, that it adjusts its mechanisms accordingly, especially to the extent, and most importantly, to the extent that its ridership includes students. And it's not really doing its job very well if it can't deliver a student on time. In fact, it's failing if it can't do that. And so while I don't have control over that system, I do agree that the ability to provide public transportation in a timely way is an important consideration. Now, in this case also, and I'm sorry that I'm going on at length, but one of the things that I have to do as the hearing examiner with a subdivision, as a matter of state law, is that I have to determine that this project will provide safe walking routes for students who might otherwise walk to school. And so that's why you heard this testimony about improvements that would better allow for walking from this to the high school, and why there is a flashing signal being posed from Killian to Coates to allow schoolers to walk to the middle school. But I don't have the ability to better control busing. I have the ability to make sure that walking is safe, but I've not been given authority to make sure that busing is timely. It's an interesting separation. And therefore, as I was listening to you, I was half my brain was listening and the other half was thinking about it. And I'm not sure that I have any ability over that concern, but I would like to have the city respond nonetheless, because it's legitimate. It's a fair point. So, Mr. Kohler, anything you would like to add to my lengthy speech?
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, very sympathetic to that. We work with intercity transit pretty regularly, and comments like that are really helpful us if we receive them and know what's going on. That way, when we're in the room with the people that run intercity transit, we can bring it up and try and work through those issues. The big thing for Yelm is we don't have a very active bus network. I believe it's one bus. And the timeline between picking up at, I think Walmart is the main stop, is like 45 minutes between buses. So we understand that's, a great length of time. And, but the big thing that they look at is ridership. And that's a continuing discussion between us as city staff and intercity transit, because we would like to see an expansion of intercity transit buses, including, up and around Toma Boulevard and down Longmire, which is a route that we've continually advocated for. But having those comments really helps us understand what's going on, and we're able to take that to where it needs to go.
I guess to reiterate briefly, I know that you have no control over the city bus itself, but I was wondering if you would take into consideration, if you were to build a lot or whatever you are planning to build in the construction behind the vet clinic of that property, whether or not the flow of traffic from people coming out, because morning traffic, I know the bus comes late. I know it's hard to stay on time because of morning traffic, and that's the reason why the bus is late. So by the high school, if we added more houses and people were going in and out to work in the morning, if that specifically would affect the bus route. So not the bus itself, but the traffic that would be by the high school.
Okay. And I will consider that. I also note that in certain developments, especially that adjoin major thoroughfares, bus pullouts are often imposed, just again to improve upon that ability of buses to interact with traffic in such a way as that, one, they can get to the site safely, and two, that other traffic can flow around them safely. This is not on a major thoroughfare, and so it's why a bus pullout would not be an appropriate consideration. And I cannot impose off-site improvements for this project. That's sort of for the same reasons I explained earlier about due process. But anyway, I will consider those impacts in my thinking. All right, thank you. Yes.
I showed up a little late, so I don't know if the effect on the schools has been.
I'm gonna slow you down first and find out who you are.
I'm Elijah Carter.
And Elijah, how do I spell your first name?
Elijah.
And last name again?
Carter.
Carter. Okay. So, Mr. Carter, let's have you sworn. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Go ahead.
So I was wondering if we took into consideration the effects on the schools. I'm sure you're aware that our school district, we keep growing the city and population, but our schools are struggling right now, and the class sizes keep growing, and the resources for students are going down less and less.
Outstanding question. And let me answer it. I'll let the city respond as well. But First of all, I don't live here. I live not too far away in Centralia. And so I remain in tune with what's going on here, and I'm certainly well aware of the challenges that Yelm has faced with its school levies, just as Centralia has faced similar challenges. And so the two cities have an interesting parallel problem with getting voters to approve the funding for those schools. And so that's creating a number of issues. The question becomes, well, shouldn't I be thinking about that in my decisions about approving new subdivisions? Entirely legitimate question. But it's important to understand how in our state system of land development, this has been addressed. And through what's called concurrency. So under the Growth Management Act, which is the state law that regulates land development, it says that certain things must happen concurrently. Certain public improvements must occur concurrently with the growth that goes along. And one of those is a level of concurrency between the growth and the available school system. But it also creates mechanisms for managing that concurrent management. And in the case of Yelm, that there is an agreement between the school district and the city for how that will be resolved through what are called impact fees. And so because there is this agreement, which provides for the payment of a fee for every new home that gets built to the school, that agreement supersedes my consideration of impacts to schools. That as a matter of law, that agreement is the required concurrency between the development and the school district. And so while I might still have unease, a worrisomeness about how that works, I must, because there is this agreement in place and it is paying something to the schools, then generally I am prevented from further consideration of how this is all impacting the schools. I think that frustrates a great many people, that it appears I'm indifferent to how the schools in Yelm are being impacted. That's far from the case, but it is simply a matter that this decision is largely out of my hands because there is already in place an agreement for dealing with that, and I'm to accept that agreement. So that's a long answer to your short question, and I apologize that it took that long to get it there. But that's why I very much understand your concerns about your schools, but it's why I'm not in a position to deny development simply because your schools are being impacted greatly. So,
Thank you for your time.
sure, you bet. Can I ask you, Elijah, why am I being treated to this large group today? I'm tickled by it. Yes.
Well, for instance, a lot of us just want to know what's going to happen with like the housing lot there, obviously.
Okay.
And frequent walking by. And
Yeah.
I personally, myself, I'm just concerned how this is going to affect. May I come to the podium real quick?
Yes.
Do I need to say my name?
Yes.
My name is Matthias Reinecke, MATTHIASREINICKE. I came because I was concerned about do I need to swear or something?
Oh, I'm sorry. You do. I was just impressed by your style. I well done, and so I got it threw me off a little bit. So let's have you swear. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. I'll start by saying I live out in Eatonville, around the Leber area. So, and my mom works at McKenna Elementary. And coming into town and out of town at those hot hours of school beginning and school ending, traffic is horrible. Like, we have to leave like at least 30 minutes early prior to, because obviously, like, it'll take 20 minutes to get there, but like we have to come like 30 minutes earlier than that 20 minutes because traffic is so horrible coming in and out. And I personally am concerned about how it will affect the bus route because I take the public bus and I have court at the moment, so like I need to take the public bus out from here to Tumwater, which is a real struggle, especially with the bus being late. Because what is it? The other day I needed to go out to Lacey for a less important thing than court, but the bus was already 20 minutes late, and I'm just concerned how the more housing and more people and more cars on the road will already, while the city bus and everything, traffic is already so slow. I'm just wondering how that will affect that, you know?
Once again, legitimate.
That year.
Everything connects to another thing, and I'm spending more time answering or responding to directly to testimony than I normally would, partly because most of you probably won't get another chance to do this anytime soon, and you've gone to a lot of trouble today. You deserve a more direct discussion about some of these things, and so I hope I'm being responsive. I'm trying to, and also taking more time to talk about things that otherwise I might simply say thank you and then go on to the next witness. But with respect,
you've been very respectful, and I understand that because I'm gonna be honest, I didn't know who you were prior to coming in here, so I looked your name up, and I'm understanding that what your job is to confirm or deny the purchase of the property, from my understanding.
Purchase, but the development.
The development,
Yes. Okay.
not just the street.
Yeah, and welcome to social media for having your lives or your roles and lives examined. There are buffers, there are guardrails to my role. My job is to focus on the development itself and view this question from the perspective of the owner of the property's right to develop under the city's laws.
And again, I understand that.
And because of that perspective, there are limits at which I can think about the ripples that a rock tossed into the pond creates, and how it emanates out to other properties and other impacts, and how it affects people, and what's called the chaos theory, that flap of the butterfly wing ultimately causes some downstream impact. And just as this causes changes in traffic and changes in people's lives in certain ways, how do those collectively affect people well down the stream, and how does that ultimately affect a drive to Tumwater? And so what I'm required, however, to do is effectively stop my thinking about that at a certain point, say, okay, I accept that life is impacted, but that's not within the parameters that I've been given. And so it is difficult sometimes because I'm always sympathetic, but sympathy can be dangerous. It can lead you to focus on things that you really don't have control of. And so I get your concerns, but to be honest, I don't think they fall within my strike zone.
They do not.
And so I appreciate them. And again, this is a great opportunity while you're here, to have conversations with staff. This is just, in fact, an excellent opportunity for that. But I think that's the better remedy, because there isn't directly anything that I can do about that.
Yeah, and I understand that.
Okay.
I didn't really have any question. I just came up to state that we're all just really curious.
Appreciate it. All right. And I do appreciate you coming.
Mhm.
I try to keep it to one round of testimony. Okay. Why don't you come back to that?
Thank you.
Certainly.
This plot of land is just a really important third space to us. We go there quite often, and we get in trouble for it, and we just want to see that it's getting taken care of and not just being expanded into these homes that aren't even being owned necessarily, and it's just going to be more rentals for people who don't necessarily care about the area.
Okay. Well, understood.
That's why we have such a big crowd.
It helps to understand that. I'll be mindful of all that in my decision making. Thank you. I think we're there. So the record should reflect that we've heard from the city, we've heard from the applicant, we've heard from the public. There is, however, the right under our system for both the city and the applicant to respond to that public comment. They have a right to respond. So, Mr. Kohler, anything you would like to respond to either in terms of the applicant's presentation or the public presentation?
Yeah, I'll keep it pretty short, but there is an argument that can go both ways in terms of the schools, and people say, well, how can you approve a subdivision when our schools are at capacity? The argument really goes both ways, and I'd like to present one other side of that argument is through the state funding, schools get paid per pupil, and so that when enrollment goes up, their funding also goes up. So there is that side. I know a lot of city staff, including myself, volunteer with like the Citizens for Support of Yelm Schools to help run levy campaigns and school bond campaigns. I personally helped run the school bond campaign that helped Yelm Middle School in Southworth get built, as well as the levy the following year in 2020. So city staff really do care. Just as a testament to the community, we do care. We have kids, we have our families that are in those schools. And have our staff volunteer on the local booster clubs. So it's less of I just want to reiterate that we do care about the school district and are in partnership with them, and understand the sentiment from the community about that.
So noted. Thank you, Mr. Kohler. Mr. Mann, do you have any desire to respond to public testimony?
I have a couple quick comments. Just wanted to point to the traffic impact analysis that was prepared for the project as it relates to traffic. Pages 12 and 23 show the level of service tables for the intersections that are anticipated to be impacted by the project. It shows the current level of service, and it shows the 2030 level of service that is going to be projected. It's important to note that regardless of the project, if the project never happened, the level of services found on page 23 are anticipated either way. So while the project will certainly have some impacts to traffic, the level of service failures, I guess, at those intersections by 2030 are anticipated to happen regardless. And so that was very, very important. That was a very important part of the traffic impact analysis that was reviewed by WashDOT and the city. And
Man, I as soon as I answered the gentleman's question, I regretted not having given a fuller answer that while LOS may be or LOSE or LOSF might be the 2030 outcomes, those outcomes will be the same whether or not this project develops. So I should have added that a little additional fact. So
good. Yeah, I just wanted to note that. And then with regard to city bus timing along Yelm Ave. It's a tough one. I'm sympathetic to the congestion that happens there. The high school does have a 1 mile walk radius that's considered to be walking, a walk, I guess, corridor. And so that I believe again would capture the noted location of the student who was maybe struggling with the bus route. So while the bus might be more convenient, I believe there's no school bus there because it's within the walk corridor. And then lastly, effects on the school. It's interesting. One of the items to make sure we are aware of is that over the last 5 years, the Yelm School District's actually had a kind of a peak. So in 2022, the Yelm School District peaked enrollment, and then since that time has seen an actual slight decline in enrollment. So we're as part of this project, we are paying the impact fees related to, and that's information from the OSPI. So that's the state enrollment data. As part of the impacts of our project, though, we still commit to pay those impact fees related to new enrollment for each home. But in other jurisdictions, it has, where you see declining enrollment. And again, this is a very minor, slight decline, but where you see declining enrollment, there is a justification to be made and an argument to be made that capacity is already provided for, and that additional impacts related to the project are not being made because the enrollment is falling. So again, we're not arguing that here, more just saying if the school districts we will pay the impact fees that to pay for growth. But where you see declining enrollment, especially Washington State of late, we've seen this across many jurisdictions. There's a case to be made that those impact fees aren't necessary because there's not an impact related to it.
Thank you, Mr. Mann. And so,
Can I say one thing?
briefly,
Okay, so pertaining to what he said about us hanging out there, like, we've gotten in trouble before, but we take care of the place. Like, we've cleaned up litter out there. We've done all sorts of stuff, like, help the nature in the community.
I appreciate all that. I found the whole discussion, I'll say amusing. I am impressed by collectively your interest in the property. I'm truly impressed. And driving by, someone's keeping it well kept. And so I do take all of that into consideration. And I do respect your interest in this unique piece of land. So with that, we have concluded our testimony. And so I want to thank all those who have participated. I'm going to go ahead and approve the subdivision. I don't have a basis to deny it in this instance, but my actual set of conditions are I'm yet mentally formulating as to whether I impose any additional conditions over what staff has recommended. I'll give that a little bit of thought and render then my decision. So although I have done so orally, that doesn't mean anything until I've done so in writing. And to do so in writing, I first have to prepare a set of what are called findings of fact. And that's maybe 20 pages of findings relating to this project, followed then by what are called conclusions of law, the legal conclusions I find that support my decision, and then the decision itself. And so that's a bit of a project that will take me hours to do and days to do. So the actual decision in this case will likely come out within a week or so. I do have 2 weeks, but I expect to have it done well within that allowed time. I do want to thank everybody. I've done 1,000 hearings. I would say I've been at this for 30 some years. I represent or I assist 3 counties and 20 some cities all over the place. This is the most interesting hearing I've had. It really is. I've had contentious ones. I've had people screaming and threatening. I've had noisy ones. I've had really argumentative ones. I've had ones that are really technical. I've had really emotional ones. I've had all sorts of ones. Huge ones. I've had 1,000 people attend a hearing. I've had hearings of every kind and nature, but I think this is the most personal one I've ever had. And I'm going to remember this one. Because 15 young adults came and found the time and the courage to talk. And that's pretty cool. So thank you for doing that. You made my day, and I appreciate that. And I have carefully considered all your comments. They're excellent comments. So again, thank you. So with that, we're adjourned.